Hey everybody, it's Connor, and it's somewhere in June. I don't know. If you're watching or listening to this, I'm fronting this episode because June is all over the place. As my friend Sock Cop would say, it is cattywampus. June is going to be a bit of a hodgepodge while I try to figure out where to put all these episodes. We had episodes that got recorded and then got split up into pieces, and other things that got moved around, and stuff happened. So I'm fronting a lot of these just to orient them in time and sort of rearrange their schedule a little bit to fit better the order of episodes. So this is the fronter for the Succession and Bear episode. So we're putting this out on June 21st because that is the Friday before the Bear season 3 premieres on FX. So I thought that would be pretty good timing for such a thing. So, and then next week you ought to get the Iron Claw review, since it relates to these two shows in certain ways. So you would have to have listened to the Bear and the Succession episode before the Iron Claw to understand that. So here I am explaining all that to you in great detail. So great. Well, here's that episode. Enjoy it. And wow, it's almost July, I guess. That's cool too. All right, let's get ourselves to the 2-minute mark so the time code's easier for me to do. Toodles. Too hot.
I was like, something's wrong with that.
Very hot.
It's gasoline.
Oh no. It's like I burned my tongue earlier tonight on fish.
Oof. That's the worst feeling. Here's the thing. Why is the tongue the worst thing to burn or bite?
It's like the most.
It hurts for days.
The most vulnerable thing. Yeah, like it's not even the pain of burning my tongue that's like what sucks. It's oh great, now I can't really taste everything to 100% for like 6 days.
I always feel like I bite my tongue more than any human on earth. And
I should bite my tongue more.
And when I do, it's like I feel like I'm drooling. Like I'm not, but I feel like I do. And I'm like, I hate this.
Do you ever, so like I'll take a nap and I'll wake up and like my kids are like tapping me and everything. And like,
yeah, I'm
drooling all over this pillow. And it makes me feel so stupid and helpless and infantile. I was like, oh, and you wake up and you're like, huh? And you just go like, what a mess. How sloppy.
There's no way to play that off.
Yeah.
You can't be a drool sleeper and still like be cool.
Yeah. You can't turn that frown upside down.
You can't. Once you're caught in the sleep drool, that's it.
And if like your wife catches you, it's like, oh, are you drooling? Or that's disgusting. You're drooling. And especially if like you nap right after you ate like a snack, like you ate a bunch of Cheez-Its, your drool's all orange. And it's like, you're staining the pillows.
That's a little too specific. I can't quite relate to that. But what I can...
I haven't done it, but I don't think so. But I've seen my children do it.
Okay. There you go.
I'm just being passive aggressive.
You were like, I was trying to be a good dad and not throw my kids under the bus.
Yeah. Instead, I'll make up a partner and throw her under the bus.
Well,
I don't think imaginary partners are part of the trolley problem. I think you can throw them under the bus and
You can pull the lever.
one imaginary partner or 5 real people.
How imaginary.
What if I have a real doll, but it's not a real person? Like a really expensive one. Like,
yes.
Like 5 human souls expensive. What do you say to that, cunt? That sounded a little too close to, well,
A little.
I tried really hard to say his name like enunciate, and it still sounded like I got to put the E on this episode. All right, well, speaking of foul language, I'll lead us off tonight. Not because it's me, although better me than you.
If the shoe fits.
Fuck you, Dustin.
Yeah, we'll forget you too.
But because we're going to talk about Succession.
Oh, fuck off. I want a broadcast network. I want to see what other news operations we can sweep up.
Local TV?
Dad, nobody watches TV.
Why shouldn't we do all the news?
Well, Kim Jong pop, because that's not how things work in this country.
We have a major problem. He's erratic. He's making bad decisions. If he's not careful, he's going to destroy the company.
Emily, you gonna do something?
I think I'm the best option.
Oh, right, because you like playing boss?
This is my vision. I take over, you two under me.
Under you.
Can we think about it?
Of course.
I thought about it. Fuck you.
This family's broken, and that has consequences.
Kick out the old man, in with the new guard.
Where you been?
I was meeting about a prospective job.
With your father's enemy?
Disagreeing with Dad is not treason.
You want this enough to go to war with your family.
It's rebellion. Sabotage. Deliberate attempt to undermine my whole business.
That's the death pit. Take a look.
I feel like I might not like it in the death pit.
Stock's gone below 130.
We could death spiral here.
Who's in charge right now? It's my company. You are a fucking nobody.
Succession, a show that has much foul language, and it fits its tone perfectly as the black comedy that it is, and in the setting that it is, which is big company people, like just big business people, nepo babies, and entitled children hoping to inherit their father's power.
Sure.
So Succession ended earlier last year. I almost said this year. Wow. Time's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
So Succession recently came to an end, and so I still had HBO, so I watched all 4 seasons. That's where it all is. It's on Max. So the show was created by Jesse Armstrong, run by Jesse Armstrong, and has a pretty big cast, as lots of prestige TV shows tend to do, where there's a lot of characters already, but even greater set of recurring characters. But the main players here are Brian Cox, Kieran Culkin, Matthew McFadden, Alan Ruck, Sarah Snook, Jeremy Strong, Fisher Stevens, Nicholas Braun, lots of people, Natalie Gold, Peter Friedman, Arian Moyed, Alexander Skarsgård in the later seasons. Really great cast, and an opening theme that grew on me.
Okay.
Like the first couple episodes, I was like, this is okay. It's kind of mid. And then by the end, I was riding that.
You're jamming.
Like that noise at the beginning. I was like, hell yeah. So Succession is, as I said, or as it's described on Wikipedia, a satirical black comedy drama. So it's about the Roy family, the patriarch being Logan Roy, the Brian Cox character, a Rupert Murdoch type, who owns and built this big media conglomerate, Waystar Royco, and he has 4 children. And so that would be Connor Roy, played by Alan Ruck, who is the oldest and the least connected to the business itself. and is with a different mother than the following three siblings, which is Kendall Roy, played by Jeremy Strong, who's like the most wants to follow in his dad's footsteps at the company. Roman Roy, played by Kieran Culkin, who's a very immature and kind of loose cannon-y wild card of a person. And Siobhan Roy, played by Sarah Snook, who is not connected to the business at first. She wants to be like in political circles, but they're all still, very connected to their father and very much benefiting from his position at the head of this company, and their proximity to his power gives them power. And so in that way, I mean, and it was explicitly made to be a tragedy in a way. So in a way, it's very Shakespearean. As things happen in the show and as they make choices and kind of get pitted against each other, the way things turn out, it's a show that's so current and about like things that really happen. It feels very connected to old storytelling in that way. So in that way, it really, really works. I think this is a show worth checking out. I was telling multiple people, I was like, Succession is good, but Succession never really left me with that satisfying feeling that you want from a show. And maybe it's just, I'm probably sure on a second watch, knowing how it turns out, I'll have less expectations for the plot. But at least on a first watch through for me, it was still like an episode would end and I'd go, wow, that was really good. But then you go, man, I just feel wound up though. And not in the way that you get wound up by Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad would wind you up and it would have this flow. There was still satisfying elements of Breaking Bad where even if the characters are making you tense or something else is happening, it's still like, I don't know, like when the episode ends, you go, ooh, like there's that little button. And so with Succession, it doesn't have that button. So that does have an effect, I think, on the experience of watching it. So I don't know whether to advise people to like binge this show or space it out. I only watched like 2 of them a week.
Okay.
So, and they're long, they're like an hour long. So it's like, and of course mine with ads, that T-Mobile ad every hour long. No, it was the Aquaman, the Jason Momoa one.
Oh yeah.
With the
with the terrible stunt double doing the backflip.
Yeah, and the singing, and then that actual song came on the radio like a week ago. I almost punched my console. I recommend Succession. Everyone's really good on the show. Brian Cox, of course, is great on the show. And then all the kids, Jeremy Strong, Kieran Culkin is probably the standout on the show. But everyone's great. Even like small part, even like Erin Moyed, who plays like an associate of theirs. Like even just everyone's good. There's no performance where I was like, that's kind of weird. And it's one of those shows that's filmed like Adam McKay is one of the executive producers. So it's filmed a lot like The Big Short, where it's just kind of like these crash zooms and, so it's one of those where I feel like as an actor, you're just always on because you don't know if you're in the coverage or not. And so it sort of forces you to step up your game a little bit, maybe. I don't know. But I think especially too comedically, like dramatically, everyone's great dramatically, but comedically too, the best scenes probably go to Nicholas Braun and Matthew McFadden. I was like, who is Matthew McFadden? Because I recognize him. He's Mr. Darcy from Pride and Prejudice, but here, like he's Tom, a guy named Tom Wamsgans. It's such a weird name. And he's married, or, he's married to one of the kid to Siobhan. So he's related by marriage to the Roys, and he's in the company, and he's just very like ingratiating to the people above him in power, but he's not like a go-getter as much as the other siblings are. And he's like secretly like a huge dick, and he's a huge dick to Nicholas Braun's character, Greg, who is like a distant cousin who sort of just weaseled his way into the company and like inexplicably is climbing the ladder very quickly inside the company. having come as like from like as a mascot, like it's very strange. Like there's the way he just sort of keeps going up the ladder and gets more and more into the inner circle just by virtue of other family members not taking him seriously and using him to manipulate their other family members. Then he learns secrets, and then he starts to have leverage, and then he starts to get promoted. It's that probably is the most satisfying. Anytime the two of them are on screen, they're like the best two actors, the acting pair of the whole show.
Sure.
So that's maybe the satisfying part.
Okay.
So yeah, I recommend Succession. I would just say, like, I don't know if I'd rush to see it. Just because it's not one of those shows. I don't know. I don't know. Put it on your list. It's definitely worth your time, but
it's
like
on my list. Yeah.
You know, I don't know how many tiebreakers it wins.
Sure.
And it's a weird recommendation. It's like,
okay.
It's like, watch it, but
it's good, but not good enough. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I'm trying to differentiate. Like, I don't like it as much as like Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, you know, but it's a really well-made show, and you know, the themes are strong, and I'm sure like it's one of those shows that really earns all the video essays that pick apart like the character dynamics and tracking.
Yeah.
I mean, because people were kind of, I'm obviously not going to give away the end of the show, but like people were pissed at the way this ended. People thought it was building towards something. And the show makes a choice that is like, well, if you are realistic about who these people are, there's no other way it would end but the way it actually ends. And that's the point.
But it is interesting. And it goes to show that, like, I think so many writers fall into the trap of like, I have to do something unexpected in the finale. And there's an element of that is valuable. But then there's also like, if you've been doing your job properly, some of your audience, maybe most of your audience, will kind of expect at least a good chunk of what your finale will be. And so honoring that is also pretty valid.
At least being like, oh, well, that makes sense. Like, that's frustrating, but it makes sense. Like, you know, a resolution. I was telling my daughter this morning, she was telling me a story, and those two kids that we know, like, they went to this other neighbor's house because that neighbor had kittens. And I was like, oh, cool. And they're like, yeah. And then so-and-so, you know, wanted to ask their dad if they could get a kitten because their dad really wants a kitten. You know, she got her mom to text their dad about it. I was like, okay. And what was his response? It's like, well, we don't know. It's like, okay, then say that. And we're waiting on his response.
Yes.
A resolution isn't always the story's over. It is, sometimes the resolution is, and that's where we've left off. And we're waiting. Like, where are we at with this?
Yeah.
We're waiting on the answer. Maybe it'll happen. Like, ooh, how exciting, I can say. She texted. Then what? Anyway, so the point is, like, sometimes shows end, and just because it doesn't end on a feel good note or the way that people wish it would end, that doesn't mean the story had a bad ending or didn't have a resolution. It does.
Yeah.
It's so hard because, like, you have to balance things. Like, you have, like, for a prestige show to end well, you have to be true to the character arcs first and foremost. And then if you're really doing your job, you make it feel like the story continues after the show ends, but in a way where you're done with it. If it feels too much like there is no story after, like, there has to be some ambiguity, or else it feels too much like you're being told a story. Not the worst thing in the world, because you are, but Succession ends, and I can't tell you what the next thing that so-and-so character is going to do after this shot cuts to black.
Yeah.
But I can tell you what I think might happen, and you can tell me what you think might happen. And they're all interesting things, but there's no denying how the show ended. It's more just like, well, what do you think happens next? I don't know. I don't think they have any options left. I think this is it for them, or blah, 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 you know?
Yeah.
You know,
it's interesting, man. Like, the end of a show is so important. And you could sit here and pick apart like every show's ending in some way, right? Like, I've always had like an issue with the way that Friends ended, right? So Friends ends with like all the characters kind of going their separate ways and like moving apart. And I'm like, I feel like you've betrayed the premise of the show. Like the premise was that they're together and that they're going to be together through thick and thin. And then now they're just apart. So you betray your own show.
The song is "I'll Be There for You."
Yeah, right. Not I'll run away from you. But then there's like Seinfeld, which I know you're watching through, so I'm not going to spoil the ending.
Right.
But it was a very hotly debated ending.
I know something about that ending. Like I know something about the setting.
Okay. So it's a hotly debated ending.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes good endings are that way. The Sopranos is maybe the chief example. There are a lot of people who hate that ending and a lot of people who really love it. I really love it. Yeah. I think it's a great ending. But like the ending of a show is so important. And it's one of the reasons why I liked the ending of, say, Breaking Bad, is it ends exactly where it promised it was going to end in the first episode.
Yeah.
There's no Deus Ex Machina to get anybody out of anything. Better Call Saul similarly ends in a way that makes logical sense in terms of progression. And so it would be odd if one of those shows introduced this weird curveball element to, do something like it. The story continues. I'm not going to spoil it. We're not talking about those, but like the story continues in Better Call Saul. There's a couple elements where you feel like, okay, maybe you could interpret this or that a different way. But it's done. Like the story's done. Their lives are not. And so like this is a common trope of, we're no longer watching this show, but the characters are still alive in the story world. Every sitcoms don't end with deaths of characters, but like
yeah.
they not typically, unless you're like How I Met Your Mother, I guess. But like you have, like the lives of these characters continue. Or I guess in Lost's case, the afterlives of these characters continue. And like you, I don't know, man. It's a hard thing because you're never going to please everybody with the ending of your story. But if you're smart, you are always laying the groundwork for that ending. Yeah. And you're making that promise to the audience that this will make logical sense by the end.
It's interesting that you mentioned How I Met Your Mother. I was going to bring that up. And I can't remember if I sent you this video, if you sent me this video, but I feel like we recently circulated a video to each other, someone's video essay about why the end, because How I Met Your Mother ended 10 years ago. And it was like 10 years later, like someone, rewatched the whole show and was like, yeah, I still don't like this ending. And it was essentially a whole video essay that was about how I Met Your Mother betrayed its premise with the ending of that show and how it ended. And it was a very detailed, very succinct, like very logical argument. Ostensibly, like the reason that they even like stuck with that ending the way they did it was like they were building towards a different ending, but then they committed to something else for some reason. And they did it because of the kids who played his kids in the future, so they could shoot them out before they aged too much. And so they were locked into this ending like years before they decided the end. It was like some crazy, like stupid reason that was easy to shoot around. Like for fuck's sake, just put them in makeup. It's not, we know they're actors. It's okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, anyways, the point being like just a couple of key factors, poor decisions led to how I Met Your Mother ended, and how that ending is like, that's a really great show. And I do, especially after watching that, I do think the ending of that show ruins it. I think it makes the show hard to rewatch because it doesn't build to what it's been building to narratively. It just goes another direction for like no fucking reason at all.
So I never watched How I Met Your Mother, but like I know a lot about it just through osmosis. And to me, it's always felt like that ending was the writers trying to have their cake and eat it too.
Mm-hmm.
It's clearly there is a working or at least a fan favorite pairing, and we want to honor that pairing, but we kind of have already committed to it not being that pairing. So how can we do both?
Right.
And I don't know, we'll just do this. And so to me, as somebody who never saw it, I have no plans on watching it now because I know that it feels like a cheat.
Yeah.
Like the writers cheated their way out of this ending they had written for themselves.
I would almost like in How I Met Your Mother's case, I would recommend, what was that, 9 seasons? I would recommend people watch the first 8 seasons.
Yeah.
And then just watch a recap of the final one and then watch that video essay, because I really think there was so much love about that show. That show was so good for so many reasons. And that ending just really shits the bed. But it's sort of like, so then it's worth exploring why it's so bad. And then having seen the series and being able to feel those feelings without spending the time on the final season, it's almost worth it. It's kind of like when you recommend someone watch like the Star Wars movies in a specific order, or skip this or don't do that, or skip this season of such and such show. Like it's sort of like, I've done that before where I've recommended a series or like a series of movies to people in a specific order. And then I've said, and then watch this video essay in between this one and this one, because that enhances the experience. Like the best way to watch it is now to bring in these other elements.
Yeah. Right.
that aren't canon, but are justify the experience.
Yeah.
Or something.
I won't go into this, but like, because again, I know you're going to watch through Seinfeld, but my favorite thing, and I haven't even finished all of Curb Your Enthusiasm yet, but my favorite thing is that the finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm, which just ended its series, and if I can get around to ever watching it, we'll review it. But like, I read about the finale because I heard the germ of the idea, and I loved it so much. I was like, I just have to know everything about this right now.
Okay.
and all I'll say, Seinfeld was a very, like I said, it was a hotly debated ending. A lot of people were okay with it, but even more people really hated it.
Right.
And the critics panned it. They hated it. So Larry David, for the final episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, does the exact same finale. I kid you not, the exact same finale for Curb Your Enthusiasm. And it is so petty and bitter, and it's perfect.
That's amazing. Yes. Good for him.
Yeah, good for him. He stands by it. He's like, this is what I'm doing, and like to get over it. So
go fuck yourself.
Yeah, right. So he did it again.
That's the best. That's the best thing. Oh, you hate this joke? Well, I'm just gonna tell it again.
I'm gonna tell it again.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
It's a very Will Forte SNL approach.
Sure. Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Oh, did I lose you? Let me keep losing you.
Yes. Yeah, let me just dig myself further.
What, fuck me? Fuck you. I love that. That's true creator power. Is just
yes.
I'm gonna take the ending everyone hated before and do it a second time
and just do it again
with my other majorly popular show.
Yes.
That's great. I respect that.
Yes. Same.
I haven't watched Curb ever, so I want to, because I respect the hell out of that decision.
Yes.
I want to support it. I want to give Larry David residuals.
Yes.
My streaming residuals. Anyway. All right. Well, okay, cool. Well, that's Succession.
Sweet.
Okay. I haven't seen this. I want to see it, so be careful, but I want to hear about the bear.
25 pounds?
No, I ordered 200.
What is beef?
You still got that meat connect? You get $12.50 for that on eBay.
Boom.
You cut vegetables like a bitch.
Not system. System, baby.
System.
This is your brother's house. I was running it fine without you.
Why didn't he leave it to you then? Don't wipe your hands on your apron, chef.
Jeff.
I refer to everybody as chef because it's a sign of respect.
You can throw down, huh?
So how you gonna pass the family test? Delicious or impressive?
Delicious is impressive.
Word.
Yo, family's up.
I just never had plátanos with like grass on it.
We want to change this restaurant, right? But we have to change the chemistry.
Hey, why are you always like watching me?
Because it's just sort of my job.
Where the chili flakes? Cousin organizes, it's more confusing.
Right there. Labeled chili flakes. This is a delicate ecosystem, and it's held together by a shared history and love.
I have every intention of turning this into a respectable place of business. Eventually.
Time to try the new sandwiches.
Yo, this shit looks different.
What do you think?
It's redundant and white, just like you.
Cool. So The Bear is currently airing on FX. Season 3 is dropping in June. I believe they shot seasons 3 and 4 together. But season 3 is coming out in June. All episodes available at once.
When in June? Because this might
June 27th.
Oh, late June. Okay, this will be out before then. Okay.
So the series is created by Christopher Storer and stars Jeremy Allen White, Eben Moss Bachrach, and I guess I'm saying that right. And I always say that wrong too. Io Edebiri, Adebri, Io Edebri, I think is how you say it. Okay. And a whole bunch of others like character players that you'll recognize from this, that, and the other. So the series centers around Jeremy Allen White's character Carmy, and Carmy is a tortured artist. We'll say that he's a chef, totally sold out to his craft. And when his older brother commits suicide, his older brother leaves his restaurant to Carmy. And so Carmy is now tasked with making this failing restaurant into something special. So the first season is him trying just that. And him and this group of like ragtag, off-color, blue-collar Chicagoland people trying to make this restaurant work, and it's super interesting. It's filmed. It's got it's almost got a documentary style to it. Like everything is kind of like handheld and close and claustrophobic, and they use a lot of like oneers, and the actors are really there getting their hands dirty, and you can feel it, and it feels dirty, and it feels rushed and stressful, and I think that's what people really are latching onto with this show, that because it centers on this world that not many of us know about. Maybe we've seen it on reality TV or whatever.
We're interested.
We're interested. It's the idea of like, how do you serve this many people quickly, and what does it take behind the scenes, and the personalities that clash in the kitchen, and it's such an interesting show. But I'll admit, through that first season, the episodes kept ending, and I kept thinking like, I'm not sure what just happened. Like things were happening, but if you asked me like what happened in that episode, I'd be like, well, they talked and I learned about characters, but plot, like what happened in the plot, I don't remember. Like I remember it, but it doesn't feel like anything substantial happened. It felt more like I was just learning character. And so to that end, there's only a few episodes of that first season where I felt like I could identify them. Like if you gave me the title, I could say, oh, that was the episode where, and a lot of them are like just kind of blending together. Now, part of this is I binged it. So, watching one right after another, this is a downside of that my mind is just like jamming them all together.
Yeah.
So I do lose a little bit of that like episode by episode feel. But by the time it ended, I'd never had this feeling before in a series. By the time it ended, that first season, it was like 5 minutes to the end, and it finally clicked that what I had been watching, a lot of things had actually happened. And up to that point, I was like, nothing's happened. And suddenly it occurred to me that a lot had happened. And it was like a weird revelation. And I haven't heard anybody talk about this. Maybe I'm the only one on planet Earth that had this experience. But it was really cool because it was as if all of the stress and like that claustrophobia cleared out. And suddenly I was able to see the forest for the trees, so to speak. Like I could see what I had been watching more clearly and recognized, holy crap, I think they pulled one over on me. Like I thought I was just watching people talk, and there was a lot of plot jammed in there, and I just couldn't see it. And so it was such a weird feeling. And I immediately started season 2, and I was like, I have to know what happens now. And season 2 definitely feels more plot driven. Mm-hmm. They have a goal. It's clearly stated. By the end of this season, this is our goal, and let's go for it. And so each episode now in season 2, I started to go, okay, clearly I know this episode is that, and this episode is this one, and this episode is this one, and this episode is this one. And they started to give, while Carmy was still the main protagonist, and we're still seeing things through his eyes, we started to spend more time with the supporting cast, which for that first season had just kind of been background noise. And now we're starting to get to know them, and I started to care for them. And what's now happened by the end of season 2, I feel like not only has a whole lot happened, but I have a really solid grip on who these characters are and why I like each and every one of them. And why they're a joy to watch. And I think it takes a strong show to be able to take a supporting character, and build an entire episode in season 2 around that character. And you're not completely like forgetting Carmy, but you are focused on this one person, and that the characters are strong enough that you can write an entire episode around one character. And I still care. And that's a strength, and that's something that happens over time. And looking back on it, I don't think you could have done it without the character work that was done in season 1. You would not be able to pluck a character up and then jam them in their own world in season 2 without the character work of season 1. And I don't know. I enjoyed it immensely. It is a stressful show. There are people that I've talked to that cannot watch it. It's too stressful. It's a lot of shouting, a lot of screaming, and a lot of frustration. The characters are always frustrated and frazzled. And as an audience member, you often are too. And you're like, if Richie could just get out of the way for a second and let Carmy do this thing, then we could. But Carmy's feeling that, and I'm feeling it, and it's just I'll say this: it's a masterclass in making your audience feel what your characters are feeling, and it's a masterclass in taking characters and making them strong enough to support an entire episode on their own. There are some sort of negatives to the show for me. Again, it's mostly about maybe the structure of it more than anything else. That again, it can start, it can mostly in season 1, maybe a little bit in season 2, but start to blend together or start to feel like we're taking a detour here, and I'm not sure why. There's a very famous episode in season 2, which has a ton of celebrity guest appearances on it, and so there's your clue. You'll know which one I'm talking about. And it's like that full episode is a detour. It's a break away from the flow of the season. And I don't hate it, but the first half that I was watching that episode, I was taken out a little bit because I was so enthralled in the arc of the plot that now to take this detour, which again, In season 2, they're taking characters, they're plucking them up, they're putting them in an episode by themselves. This is what this episode is. It's revealing character, but that episode, because it kind of takes place out of continuity and this, that, and the other, it feels like it's too much of a detour. And for me, it like interrupted the flow of things. Now, I've rewatched it much better on the second time. That first time I was just very much caught off guard. So the show is catching me off guard over and over. And it's compelling, it's confusing, and it's a little bit maddening because I just so want this to just do the thing a TV show does. And the show refuses to be a TV show. It's like, we're just going to tell you some stories, man. And they're going to be good stories, but everything you know about TV, just toss it out the window. Cause we're just doing it. Like, hey, if we want to spend a whole episode here, we're going to do it.
We're free balling.
And yeah. And that I think may be frustrating for some people, but I think most of the people I've talked to enjoy that fact about it, that it's not predictable. The next episode, you may jump out of continuity and you may be doing something that you did not at all expect. And I think it's both a weakness and a strength of the show. So the show is unique and it's interesting and it's fun and it's frustrating and it's all the emotions. I don't have much more to say other than I really enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to season 3. And it is always interesting to take a character, we talk about like Carmy, to take a character like Carmy, dissect him, and allow him to be his own worst enemy. This is a really like tried and true, for me, a really tried and true way to get me on your side. Let a character make the wrong choice and let a character do the wrong thing, and don't be afraid to give them the consequences of that thing. Breaking Bad, we've already mentioned Breaking Bad, but Breaking Bad was so good because they let the characters dictate the story. Mm-hmm. Over and over, you hear Vince Gilligan talk about the characters. They didn't come into a season saying, well, we want to do this. It was, what's the character's next step? Okay. Once that's written, what's the next step? What's the next step? It's the characters are dictating where this is going. This reminds me of that approach, albeit a little more like, a little more loose and sketchy, if that makes sense. Like Breaking Bad is a still life portrait. It's real and it's masterful. And this is a Jackson Pollock. Mm-hmm. That's how you explain this. Like, this is just, we're throwing it all out there, and both are art and both are great and both have their strengths, but it's a very different flavor, but they're both being driven by their characters. And so for me, I love it. I'm like I said, excited for season 3. I do not, and I say this here for The Bear 2, I do not give recommendations for shows that have not ended. What I will say is, if you're on the fence about whether or not you should start this show, try it. It's worth your time to try it. But don't let my enthusiasm for particularly season 2 of this show influence you in a way that when they eventually jump the shark in season 17, you go, well, Dustin told me to. I just finished season 2, man. I don't know about season 17 yet.
I'm going to burn down his house.
I did there was one time when I recommended a show before it ended, fairly recently in the last, 10 years. And that show burned the heck out of me, and I will not do it again. And no, all I'll say, that was like personally, I didn't even talk about it on the podcast.
I'm trying to think.
I told people like, I really like this show. And then like 2 episodes later, I was like, stop. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. But for me,
What show is this?
I'll tell you off mic.
Oh, interesting.
But I am enjoying The Bear. So if anything that I have said makes you think you might enjoy this too, check it out. I think it's worth your time, but do not hold me to anything after season 2. I do not know anything about it. Like season 3 may be terrible. Who knows?
This episode is frozen in time.
This episode is frozen in time. And I guess I do want to throw this out there too. I'm not sure. I haven't followed the Bears like awards, like how many Emmys they've won or not been nominated for. I don't know. I'm on IMDb. It says it's won 10 primetime Emmys. Okay, that's great. That's 10 more than Better Call Saul ever won. Which is wild to me.
Yeah.
I think that Jeremy Allen White is putting on a fantastic performance in this show. And whatever awards he's won for this, it's got to be something, and he deserves them all because the monologues they give him, and there's one in particular, you'll know it when you see it. I don't know how long it is, but it is so long and it's so perfect, and it's all in one take. The show does oneers better than any show I've ever seen, and lets the actors just act. And it's so fantastic. But then Ibn Masbakrak, who plays Richie, is, I mean, like another level in terms of charisma and in terms of his sheer like hateability. But while being so charismatic is another level. And Io Debris is so good at playing this character. She's a young up and coming chef who kind of idolizes Carmy and really wants to impress him, but also make a name for herself as her own chef in her own right. And she is fantastic at this like hungry kind of self-conscious, but like on the border of really conceited. It's arrogant and it's self-conscious, and that's such anytime an actor can play two opposites at the same time, that is art, and she does it so well in this. And when it's funny, it's really funny, and when it's dramatic, Lord have mercy, it's dramatic. But it's so good.
Excellent.
I dig it.